Okay, so now I started that again. I've rotated my screen. No, not letting me. Not having any of it. Okay, all right, guys. Well, the tech gods are not my friend this week. I'm going to have to try and balance that on there like that. And hope that it stays. It's a bit precarious. But it's not letting me rotate it the other way for some reason, which is very annoying. Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to hold it. Hello, Maud. Thanks for bearing with me and coming back on. Nice to see you. Today, we're going to be talking to another resident security expert. Seems that we have a few, and I'm very grateful to them, because this is an area that I don't know much about at all, actually. So very, very grateful to Stuart Brown, who's going to be joining us today to talk about data breaches and what we need to do. What we need to do to guard against a data breach in the first place. Secondly, how we're going to know if we've had a data breach. And thirdly, and very importantly, what do we actually do if we're in the very unfortunate position of having had a data breach take place. So I'm going to bring Stuart onto the camera now. And maybe that will, if I bring you on, Stuart, then maybe it'll let us go side by side and it will let me have my phone the way that I want to have it. So let's try and bring you on. Okay, bring Stuart onto camera. Okay, it's thinking about that. There we go. Hello, Stuart.
Hi, how you doing?
Aside from the tech problems, all good. But it would be fair to say the tech problems this week have been driving me mad. So yeah, it's not been a good week for tech problems. That is for sure. I'm just going to see if can I now rotate this? No, it's still not working. It's very frustrating because I've done exactly the same setup many, many times before and it's been absolutely fine. But hopefully people will be able to see us side by side on the screen. Let me just check how people can see that in the group. Okay, it's still got a bit of catching up to do in the group. Okay, so Stuart, aside from the tech problems, thank you so much for joining us today. You've been very helpful.
No problem.
Very helpful in contributing to some of the discussions in the group that have more of a security aspect. So thank you very much for that. And you have very, very kindly agreed to give some of your time today to talk us through the position on data breaches, which hopefully is, nobody in this group is going to find themselves in the position of having a data breach, but it's something that we all need to know about, not how to deal with it, but the first step of how do we actually stop it happening in the first place. So thank you very much. I'm going to ask you some questions. We'll just have a really informal chat and I'm sure the group will benefit hugely from your huge expertise in this area. You want to just say a few
Sure.
words about you and your experience in this and why we should know that you're the absolute expert in this area?
Well, I've been in IT for over 30 years, worked in all kinds of different organizations, so different projects, technical architects, and latterly in the last 2 or 3 years just specialising particularly in the security aspects, ethical hacking, and a couple of years ago the government introduced the Cyber Essentials scheme, which is something that all SMEs should be aware of because it's now becoming part of the supply chain requirements, particularly in government contracts. So if you supply into the likes of the NHS or any of the civil service, they're now making it requirements that suppliers have to be cyber aware, and through that having gone through an accreditation, which is the Cyber Essentials at a very basic level for a small business, up through Cyber Essentials Plus, and then on to other accreditations.
Oh my word! And I thought it couldn't get any worse, but now Stuart seems to have frozen mid-flow. So let's see if we can get Stuart back. Are you there, Stuart?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, no, sorry, I just got a call.
Oh, yeah, that's happened to me before as well. Okay, great. I'm glad it's nothing more serious than that.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm just doing this on my phone, so I'm
Oh.
not. It interrupted me. Yeah, so 18 months ago, are you there?
Yes.
You're wobbling quite a lot.
It's just, I know, this is just terrible. And also, I've noticed, I've looked at the recording on my iPad, and you're appearing in this little kind of bubble above my head, which is not the best format at all. So I'm wondering if I could actually do it on my iPad, and that might work. But honestly, this week has just been a tech disaster. It would be fair to say. Why don't why don't we kick off? I'll ask you a question. You can be talking about it, and I'll experiment with my iPad and see if it's going to work on there. Okay. So my first question is, so bearing in mind that most people listening to this are not the likes of Facebook or big multinational or anything like that. What are the things that we, sort of reasonably small online business that isn't doing much with data more than marketing it, probably. Maybe they're doing a bit of Facebook ads, but there's no, processing of large volumes. There's no sensitive data. There's no apps passing data between third parties, that kind of thing, other than your sort of usual processors like Facebook and people like that. What are the risks, I suppose, is the first question. What are the risks of a data breach? Because I'm sure there's probably a lot of risks other than just the fact that somebody wants to hack in because they perceive that there's valuable information there. So talk us through the risks.
Yeah.
What are the risks, and how concerned as small business owners do we need to be about data breaches?
Well, the risks are varied, but and it depends on your absolute business as to whether the risks that you take are commensurate with what's classed in the GDPR. But in essence, the primary concerns for small businesses are loss of equipment. So if you leave your laptop train or have it stolen, the first principle is knowing as a business what data you have, where that data is, and what's it stored on. So if you lose a device, or if you have a data breach where you click on a phishing email or that then in effect invites intruders into your machine or into your home network or into your small business network, what are they going to find? How are they going to find it? And how are you going to know they're going to be there? The first thing under the GDPR is that you need to know what data you have, where it is, and if you haven't done an exercise as knowing, where the data is in your organisation, and subcontracts, etc., then how do you know you've had a data breach? If you don't know what data's there, you don't know if it's potentially been stolen, or it's impossible to work out whether it has been stolen. So the start of the whole recommendation for any business is to know and understand what your data is, where it is, and who potentially has got access to it, because many data breaches do occur from either employees or third-party suppliers who have access to that data. So if you have a website and you potentially use it for marketing, or you may be an e-commerce site, then there's even more steps you need to take care of in terms of your third-party, particularly data processing agreements, that they're in place and you know where your data is. That's the most important thing, is to know what your data is, where it is, and who has got access to it.
Okay. So that's good, because the starting point in my pack is the data inventory, which will give everyone a really good overview as to what the data is, where it's being transferred to, that kind of thing. So in terms of, so I just want to talk about the general security risks then, so we can all just get a handle on that. So in terms of an online breach, I mean, we know there's the kind of breach, if you like, where an employee leaves some printed out copies on the train and someone steals it and, you know, whatever. Yep. But in terms of someone actively, you know, hacking in or doing something like that, or I mean, a breach is a loss of data as well. So if there's just if there's a problem with, I guess, a hosting company or something like that, even that would still be classed as a data breach. If
well, I'll just read you the definition from the ICO's website. A breach of security leading to the accidental or unlawful destruction, loss, alteration, unauthorized disclosure of, or access to personal data transmitted, stored, or otherwise processed in connection with the provision of a public electronic communications service. Bit of a mouthful.
So pretty all-encompassing, isn't it? So it's clearly not.
It is, and
it's clearly not just talking about where somebody actively hacks in to want to try and steal the data. It's much wider than that.
It's who's got access and why in your business case do they have access to that data. So if you employ, you know, 2 or 3 people or 2 or 3 subcontractors, it's having defined the lines of what data they have access to, what their you know, if for example you use a courier company and they have, you know, personal details of deliveries to customers, how long do they keep that data for, when does it get destroyed, you know, knowing, you know, your entire supplier model as well as your customer model as to what agreements are in place and what data transfers in and out of each sort of, whether it's a website, whether it's your email system, whether it's your you know, just your spreadsheets that you're keeping track of things on. You know, who's got access to them is very important. So if you, you know, if you have a mate down the street who helps you out with technical problems, you know, is it, you know, they become a processor of your data, you know, and have had access to it. So you've got to be very careful in terms of, you know, the definition of the terms by the ICO and what you do as a
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking about things like, you know, if a business is storing holiday data, for example, you know, if there was people targeting that so that they know when people are on holiday so that they could go and break in, you know, that's...
Yeah, absolutely. There's all manner of ways. I mean, you know, if you like, the what's called social engineering is where these sort of hacking groups and you know, data thieves sit and they analyze people and what you're doing on social media and what you're doing, you know, if your settings aren't secure within, you know, you may have a, you know, out of office notice on your Facebook page. That's probably not a good idea in terms of if you're going on holiday and who the owners are. You know, it really starts, you know, if you have a web presence, i.e. you have a website, a domain name in your business name, it really starts there, because if you have registered it under your personal name, then on the domain name registration will have your personal details. A lot of people have, you know, they kind of forget about it because they registered it 3 or 4 years ago. Nobody really took any notice. So, you know, when people want to socially engineer whether you're a likely target for a data breach or a phishing email scam or things like that, which often, you know, solicitors are, people who work in the health industry, supply chain, medical practitioners, things like that, then, you know, you have to understand exactly what data you've put out there. And if you've put out personal data in your domain settings, then you need to take steps to rectify that, as well as who you use as suppliers for IT support, for web hosting, whether they're reliable, do they have you know, do they operate out of a bedroom, or do they, you know, are they a fully fledged IT company with proper security processes? So, you know, you have to look at, it's back to the start, you know, what data you have, where you have it, where you've given it away, how to retrieve that information, how to subscribe to privacy. I mean, most domain name registers have privacy options so that you can hide your personal details. Have you done it? Many thousands of domains are still open in terms of having personal contact details on there.
No, absolutely. Can you still hear me? Because I've taken
other areas.
Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
The headphones out so I can put the phone on the tripod because my arm was hurting. But you can still hear me.
Yeah.
You can still hear me. Good. Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
So I suppose what the message I want to really get people to understand is how much of a risk it is, because I don't want to give people sleepless nights about there being a data breach, but you know, we need to get some kind of sensible risk check on how likely it is. I mean, I don't suppose you know.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't suppose there are any stats out there, are they, about the size of business and the number of data breaches out there? But
well, not in terms of number of breaches, but what the interesting statistic that comes out in a lot of cybersecurity presentations is how long is it before someone realizes they've been breached. Mm-hmm. Now, the UK average is over 220 days. So before somebody actually realizes you've been breached. Now, you know, you liken that to, you know, if you compare it to your house and home security, it's like leaving the window open for 220 days and not knowing who's come in and who's gone out, or the back door, you know, open. It's you know, when somebody gets into a system through, you know, various things like either, you know, phishing emails and things like that. You've clicked on a link, you downloaded a file, it contains some malware or some kind of baddie, you know, inviting somebody into your network. They can sit there and you know, basically, you know, go undetected for a good number of, you know, a good while. So it's very difficult once somebody's...
Sorry, there's a delay on the line. How does it normally come to people's attention when there is a data breach? How does it normally come to somebody's attention? How does it come to the, say, the small business owner? How does it typically come to the attention?
Potentially, if you do have a decent antivirus and malware solution on a machine, it may pick it up after the event. I mean, you would hope that it would pick it up, you know, before it happened. But invariably, you know, these kind of attacks are becoming more and more sophisticated these days, and becoming, you know, antivirus and malware software is very reactionary as opposed to proactive in terms of detection. And it's, you know, when you're a bigger company, you can afford better what's called border control and more robust security systems to mitigate the risk. But when you're a small business, you're very you know, potentially quite open to you know, somebody clicking.
Oh, we've lost Stuart again. Maybe his phone's gone off.
Yeah, it's back.
Yeah, was that the phone again? You can put it on divert.
Yeah, it's just...
I hope that works. I've got mine on divert, but then a phone call did come through the other day when I was doing a live. So who knows? Who knows? Yeah. So
yeah, no, it was a message actually.
Okay. So what really? I mean, what you're talking about there is so. And I, you know, just don't understand enough about this kind of stuff. But say the Russian hackers. I'm watching Homeland at the moment, so the Russian hackers are on my mind. Now, I'm not a bank. I don't, you know, people can't, you know, I've not got that level of amazing information that these hackers are going to want to get. But presumably, what they're interested in is just going into people's back-end databases and getting names and email addresses so that they can spam them and do potential phishing exercises and things like that. Is that why they're doing this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that most people who have a broadband connection and they use it for both home and for work will just use the standard router that's given to them by the ISP. Now, it's not really classed as a security device. Yes, it potentially stops attacks to your router, but what it doesn't do, it doesn't protect anything that goes out from any device inside your network. So if your machine gets compromised, or a video or a security CCTV camera, for example, gets compromised, or your smart TV that's not quite smart really gets compromised, then once somebody's inside your network, then because ISP routers aren't really good security devices, they don't stop data being removed from your network. If you have a more comprehensive firewall solution, then you can potentially stop. It's about what necessary steps you can take as a small business owner. One of the principal elements is your border call, and if decent devices cost between £300 to £800. Now it's about whether you think your business is needs to take that step of properly protecting itself. A lot of small offices operate from home, and when you have if you've got kids and they bring friends home and they connect to your home Wi-Fi, then potentially you're putting at risk your business devices that are connected to the home network and the home Wi-Fi. So having some method of splitting out, your home network from your business network is also an advisory. It's becoming, again through the Cyber Essentials and program, these sorts of things, when you talk to experts, become more readily talked about in terms of protection, knowing who goes onto your network, why they go onto the network. So when you have
just taking that scenario, then when children's friends come around to play and they're logged onto my Wi-Fi to play their iPad game, what threat is that going to have on my network?
Well, if their iPad is compromised and they bring in a virus or they bring in malware, it's a bit like the WannaCry outbreak inside the NHS and various other organisations. Once one device has got, it goes back to ring fencing your business in terms of risk.
So sorry,
with
Stuart,
knowing what devices.
I'm really not up to speed with this discussion at all. So just in my ignorance here, so a friend brings in a compromised iPad that they connect to my Wi-Fi. Somehow they can transfer a virus over the Wi-Fi to my network. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
That's how devices spread from, malware can spread from device to device. And if somebody's got access to, say, a CCTV camera inside your network, they can bounce off that device onto other devices inside the network.
So same principle in a coffee shop, for example?
Absolutely, and that's why in the presentation, I forget the guy's name, but using a VPN inside a if you're any public access to the internet, if your device is a business device, then solely recommend using a VPN.
Right. Okay. Phew. Okay. So this scenario then, the friend brings the iPad in that's been compromised, the virus spreads via the Wi-Fi to my system. I've got a membership site with thousands of names and email addresses on there. They can then, is that what they're after? They're after those names and email addresses to then spam them, send
potentially they're after that. They're after confidential information that could potentially be used to be used to compromise your business, potentially through ransom, or it's very much what data you have, how sensitive it is, whether it can be used, whether it's about your clients. Can it be used to set up phishing expeditions against your clients? If you've got a list of 10 email addresses at another client, can they target those with the information and pretend to be you because they've picked off your email and
so
and
how effective
a year's
how effective are the malware, the typical malware that's on PCs and Macs and things like that? How, if you didn't know anything about this, what's the real risk? So you'd say you've got your shop bought malware on there, or a sort of commonly known malware and antivirus protection. What are the risks of that actually happening? I know you can't give me obviously you can't give me a number, but is that fairly low risk, would you say? I mean, how many of these viruses are out there, and is the current malware kind of sufficient to protect against that?
There's tens of thousands of malware out there. So and over the years there's been so many. If you have devices, you need to make sure that they're up to date in terms of updates and patches. So if you're running Windows, then Windows updates. You need to make sure you're running the firewall on your Windows machines and on your Apple computers. You need to make sure, yes, the antivirus is there and it is up to date and being updated.
That's a really, sorry to interrupt, but that's a really interesting point, because when I get those updates, I just think, oh, what a hassle. That's either going to slow my computer down, or it's going to take ages for it to install, or whatever. So I often leave my software updates for months. So you're saying that really puts it at risk. We need to do that straight away. Okay.
Yeah, because the thing is, if somebody gets onto your machine, they will identify what are called vulnerabilities on that machine. So if you're running Windows 7 without any security updates, then there's an online list of probably several hundred potential ways of gaining administrative access to the machine, or and then if you've got root or administrative access to a machine, you've got access to everything potentially, and then you can siphon off the data. You've probably got access to other passwords that are on the machine that could potentially get into other systems remotely from there, because if you connect, for example, into your web hosting provider over FTP, which is a very old way of doing it, which is insecure, then potentially you can find and gain access to other systems that they shouldn't have access to.
So what is I'm going to ask my web person this. So we shouldn't be connecting by FTP. What should we be connecting by?
By what's called SFTP. It's a secure version, so your encrypted data.
Right. Okay, I'm sure she's on the case with that, but that's good to know. Okay.
And many web hosts have control panels for you to access your website or your admin system in your website. You need to make sure that you're connecting via HTTPS, i.e. secure links, not HTTP. And believe it or not, just recently I got access to a client's entire control panel, their entire database, their entire their online website, all via an IT supplier's control panel in an insecure format. And this is that sort of thing is disturbing to find, and this close to the 25th of May, that even IT companies who provide local support and things like that, local domains and domain registrations and local email services to small businesses, which is very common, that small companies go to local providers because they want local service. You need to make sure that the services that they provide to you are over secure links and encrypted links.
So with the HTTP and HTTPS websites, if we have our existing website that is HTTP, is that when people get those little pop-ups saying this website is not secure, and our browsers are encouraging us not to go onto those websites?
Yeah, that's one of the things over the last 6 months that I've been encouraged by a lot of the browser providers. But again, it's only if you update your software regularly. So the latest versions of Chrome, for example, and Firefox and Edge do do prompt you, this potential website is not secure. That you may have, if there's a login panel on a login and password panel on an HTTP page, it will warn you and say this is potentially insecure. So you really need to make sure that if you run your own website, that you've got user access to various parts of the website, that you are providing only secure access to your own website. And also when you're going around on using clients, suppliers, you may have ordering systems that you get onto for your supply chain, and just double check and make sure that everything and your login IDs all go over secure links, not over HTTP, because they could potentially be compromised.
Wow, there's lots to think about, isn't there? Is there anything? So we talked there about having so we've got our usual home network, and you're saying that the best practice would be to have the business network separate or on a VPN.
Split. Yeah. You can split your business devices by with not very costly hardware these days, to separate your business network from your home network.
And what would the kind of thing we'd be doing there? Would we need to get a specialist in to help us with that, or is that something you can just go and buy at PC World or something?
Well, you get into a technology called potentially into what's called VLAN technology, which is virtual LAN. So you can still physically use the same pieces of wire. Now, most small IT companies should probably be aware of how to assist you in doing this. Devices to support it cost a decent gigabit VLAN switch, 8-port for home, can probably cost about £30. So you could follow some online guides as to how to split it. It all depends how technical you are, or if you just want a box solution, then it's possible to buy a box solution that can separate and have different solutions.
Okay, so there's that part about separating the business devices from the home network. We talked about making sure that you're connecting to servers by SFTP rather than FTP. We've talked about only accessing and putting personal details into HTTPS websites and not HTTP ones. And indeed, if we currently have our own business website on HTTP, then we need to think about upgrading that to HTTPS. And I've seen a comment in there saying you need to purchase an SSL certificate for your website for HTTPS encryption. I believe GDPR either requires or definitely requires encrypted data transfer from browser to visitor. So can you say a bit more about the SSL certificate, Stuart?
Well, first of all, you can either buy an SSL certificate through your domain registrar, potentially if you use Betty, or
we'll just give him a couple of seconds to come back. Oh no, we've lost him. Disaster. Okay, well hopefully he'll pop back. Let's look at some of your questions while he's coming back on the line. So I saw one right at the start that I can answer, that I don't need Stuart for. Just for those of you who have joined late, yet another technological problem this week. I have been besieged by technological problems. I have done so many of these Facebook Lives before and had my phone set up in exactly the same way that I did today, but today it decides that it will not work in landscape mode. Okay, so that's why you've got Stuart in a little box above my head. I have tried turning the phone. I have tried starting again and doing it from scratch in both portrait and landscape mode, and nothing's working. Okay, so we're just going to have to go with this today. Okay, so David said, do you need to have controller and processor agreements amongst employees to mitigate data breaches. No, David. So controller processor agreements are just at the legal entity level, so the employer level, okay? But employees will be subject to general fiduciary duties of confidentiality. Hopefully you'll have an IT security policy that tells employees what they can and can't do with things, give them some training on how to mitigate data breaches, etc. Okay. Elaine's making the point about with GDPR coming in, who is data, as in, you know, when you have a domain name, there's a who is site where you can go on and you can find out who owns the domain, and unless you pay for that extra service where you're anonymised, then your personal data is there. So yes, it'll be interesting to see, Elaine, I've not even thought about that, what the position will be with that going forwards. Ian says, if you're running a business, you currently can't opt out of having your address details published. Oh, okay, well that goes against what I've just said. I'm sure I opted out when I did mine, so maybe I'll look into that. Carl says, with subject access requests, if you collect email addresses for user account info and that generates a user ID in the database, and you relate lots of other marketing data to the user ID, would you have to send them that data? In fact, user ID, not sure I understand that question. So hang on. So any click tracking, usage data, or any other data you collect that is related to that ID that ties back to the email address could be considered personal information. Yes, I believe it can be considered that. I'm not sure who you're talking about sending it to though. So sorry about that, Carl. Can't really follow that question. John J says, is the threat of blackmail going to become more lucrative and easy for hackers? For example, they hack your data, steal sensitive data, but rather than bombard you with spam, they come to you and say, pay up or we'll leak your data and you'll be at the mercy of GDPR fines. Well, yes, well, we don't want to think about that, Jay, do we? Let's let's hope that people don't get that idea. Mary, yeah, what costs £300 to £800? What's this about making the router secure? That was, yes, I think that was about, I think we covered that after your question, which was about making the business network separate from the home network, although he then did say that that seemed to be quite cheap. So we'll ask Stuart to clarify when hopefully he comes back on. Let me see if he might have, when I go through these questions, he's probably popped back on at the bottom and we can bring him on. Okay. Richard is plugging his IT company there. I should delete your promo there, Richard. But he does kindly say, this gentleman is giving good advice and knows his stuff. Well, jolly good. Okay. Is he back? Is he back? Is he back? He's back! Right, let's get you back on, Stuart. Bring Stuart on camera. Hello, we lost you.
Yeah, you just asked me about SSL certificates. Yeah, pick up there. You can actually get free SSL certificates from a website called Let's Encrypt. Most IT companies know about them, so if your web hosting company or your may even provide it through your control panel, so you can get free SSL. Also, you can purchase certificates for 1, 2, 3, 5 years or whatever, starting probably from about £50 to probably £200 or £300. It depends on the level of what's called insurance you require, and whether you want sort of a gold star certificate, which are the more expensive ones. So, you know, you just need to check out that you cover yourself on SSL.
Okay, awesome. So I was just, while you were off there, you might have heard me asking reading the question out loud. You know what you were saying earlier about something costs £500 to £800. What was? Can you remind us what that bit was again?
Sorry, just shut the door.
No.
A decent firewall, border control unit, to Cisco do them. You can get them with open source software, for example, with pfSense,
And how is that different? Sorry to interrupt. How is that different from the VLAN technology and box solution you were talking about earlier? If I got the wrong end of the stick, is that two different things?
Well, it becomes part of with the VLAN technology and the decent firewall. You can then segment your network from home use and business use.
Okay, so the £500 to £800 firewall unit, that's for the home and business to protect both of them. And then you use this device, this VLAN technology to split off your business from the home.
Yeah, so you can use the same cabling and or Wi-Fi points that you have.
Okay, awesome. Okay, that's brilliant. So let's move on then, just conscious of time. Let's move on to the... so you somehow become aware that you have a data breach. So the nasty Russian hackers have, and sorry if anyone's Russian, I'm only using that as an example because I'm watching Homeland at the moment. So no offense to anybody who's Russian. But the hackers have, they've come in, they've done their stuff, they've spammed all your contacts, they've somehow got hold of your banking passwords or whatever else. So I guess this is looking at two ways, isn't it? In fact, we'll leave me as a consumer and as an individual on one side. We'll just talk purely about, the compromising of our data subjects' data that we're storing as a business owner. So that's happened. And I heard what you said before about the stats of it being 250 days until someone actually finds out about it. Now, how does that interplay with the requirements in GDPR about, notifying that within the time frame, whereas if it is reportable, then you've got to do that within 72 hours.
Yes, correct.
Actually, let me just read the wording of the data to remind myself whether it's 72 hours of becoming aware, isn't it? Actually, I think. Let me just check. But while I'm checking that, Stuart, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how we can, is there anything more we can do to find out if there is a data breach other than what you said before about, if you've got a good piece of protection, it can, I guess, does it alert you after the event or does it alert you that it's stopped it in the first place? Talk us a little bit around that.
Well, if your antivirus or malware software does detect that you've got a virus or malware installed, it can alert you. Secondly, you would probably have to intervene to actually try and remove it. The recommendation would be to disconnect your machine from the internet or from your local network to start with, so you've in effect isolated it. So potentially you can't, if it's on Wi-Fi, turn your Wi-Fi off. If it's on your physical network, unplug your device from the network. And then you need to try and decide, if you don't have any skills in terms of determining whether you potentially got a nasty virus and how long it's been there, is you need to, find some professional advice. If you've gone through something like the Cyber Essentials program and been certified, you'll probably find along with it, you'll get some insurance, which will include some forensic analysis of the insurance cover to pay for external forensic analysis to come in and determine the extent of your breach. If it's very difficult for non-technical people to understand potentially what data they have lost and how long your machine has been compromised or how long your network's been compromised. And if you're unsure whether other devices on your network are also infected, then turning your router off, plugging your broadband to start, is also a good idea. So,
okay, let me just stop you there and ask you some questions about that then, because that's really interesting. So tell us more about the Cyber Essentials program, and also the insurance. How much would that be likely to cost if you had the insurance versus if there is a data breach, getting in the person to assess how much data has been lost? Talk us through that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Cyber Essentials, you have to contact a company that's been certified to validate. You can first of all, you can self-validate your business if you know what you're doing online with some of the providers. For example, with IASME, you can go through a question and answer process. It's quite lengthy and if you answer all the questions in a good enough way, then you can gain the accreditation and the cost is about £300 to £400. A lot of companies who provide this will also provide probably half a day training as well, again at the similar sort of money, to assess and help you answer all the questions correctly and actually look at whether you do what you say you do when you're filling in these things. And with that accreditation, you will get a certain level of insurance that will cover you up for, I don't know, £5,000, £10,000, £15,000 worth of forensic analysis. If you get the more advanced Cyber Essentials Plus, then you will go through a much more rigorous assessment, which it also includes what's called a penetration test, which occurs both inside your network and outside your network to determine what your security is like inside your network, and also potentially what people can access from outside your network. So and costs for that probably start around £1,500 minimum. And then if you want to, I often get asked, well, how do you say you're GDPR compliant? Well, in security terms, my answer is to go through Cyber Essentials Plus as a minimum, but also the next level, which is things like the IASME governance level with GDPR, which covers a lot of questions on your data security as well as your physical cyber security. So, if you're a small business of probably 5 to 20 people, then the Cyber Essentials Plus is probably the minimum. And if you're bigger than that, really, the IASME governance, or there are other equivalents that you can go through to be accredited to. It makes also from a supply, as I said at the beginning, a supply chain. Knowing that your suppliers are also, your local support company should be at least Cyber Essentials Plus accredited, so that, as an IT support organisation, they should have gone through the accreditation to make sure that their processes are your hosting company should probably at least be ISO 27001 accredited. I mean, a lot of small businesses do hosting, and knowing that they follow good practice is reassuring for your business that you're taking a lower risk than you are with, a company you've not really done due diligence on.
Okay, awesome. So, with the basic Cyber Essentials program, that's about £300 to £400. Insurance is included as part of that. And as part of that insurance, you get cover for 10 to 15.
Some of the providers.
Some of them are. You get cover for £10,000 to £15,000 worth of forensic analysis if there is a breach. The next step up from that is Cyber Essentials Plus, which costs about £1,500. Did you say?
Yeah.
Okay. And what does that give you over and above the basic level?
It really gives it means that an expert has come down and tested your network and tested your security, looked at your processes, and actually asked potentially employees or gone through that when you've written an answer, have you got proof that you have actually done, you actually do practice what you say? Because it's very easy for some companies to just write some processes and say, oh, we're compliant. However, the Cyber Essentials Plus is really geared to check and validate that you do what you say.
So are these the kind of services that you help people with, Stuart?
Yeah, I'm accredited through the IASME consortium, and been through the training, etc. So a lot of it is common sense, to be perfectly honest, but it's the skills you need to be test that machines are patched, checking that they when you say they get updated every day or every week or every month, that they have and then doing a bit of what's called ethical hacking to actually try and determine whether at a very at a network level that you are secure.
Okay, brilliant. So thanks for those of you who posted in the group. Yes, it is indeed. So 72 hours after having become aware of a breach, then you need to notify the supervisory authority of the data breach, unless the personal data breach is unlikely to result in a risk to the rights and freedoms of natural persons. Now, how are we supposed to assess that, Stuart? In terms of, if you know that someone's name and email address has been compromised, then how can you guess what the intention is of that person and hazard a guess as to whether it's going to result in a risk to the rights and freedoms of natural persons?
It's the $10,000 question, isn't it? How can you assess your own? You're policing your own data loss in effect, and do you err on the side of caution and report it anyway? That would probably be my advice. If you haven't got an idea how much data has been lost, err on the side of caution and report it. The ICO can always turn around and say, we're not going to take it any further. At least you've reported it. Whereas if you don't report it and 6 months, a year down the line, your list appears on the dark web as freely downloadable, then you don't know. One of the things I was going to mention is that one thing you should do as your own business is check through all your email addresses that you've used and whether they've been compromised in a data breach in the past of somebody else. There is a website, if you search for hacked email, check your hacked email or check if your email has been hacked. I've got the link, I'll post it later. You can put your email address in and it will tell you whether that has ever been in a data breach. For example, TalkTalk's data breach, any of them. It's just a facility that an ethical hacker has put online to make sure that when new lists appear on the dark web or in various places for people to download, it gets amalgamated here so that people can actually validate whether their data has been breached. So if your email and potentially your passwords that you've used to log into other sites has been compromised in the past, first you've got to find out if it has been, and then you need to take steps to make sure that you've checked all yours and all your employees' emails to make sure that, and if they have, then either change the email address that user's using, or at least make sure that you go around the websites and change the passwords that have been used. And this should be part of your GDPR practices, that every 3 or 6 months that you check, you're protecting your business by checking and rechecking people's emails. There are extensions for things like Chrome that can do this for you if you use webmail. It just varies. But it's about having a process of checking that your email addresses haven't been compromised by other people.
So are you just talking there about internal email addresses? You're not suggesting that we run our database of our prospects through this system?
No. Just your own business email addresses.
Right. Okay.
And obviously any personal email addresses you have.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Okay, awesome. So we've talked about, we think, so it somehow comes to our attention that we've got a data breach. We get in a forensic analysis person to come and assess how much data has actually been compromised. We then need to take a view as to whether we alert the supervisory authority, and if we think we have to do that, then we've got to do that within 72 hours of becoming aware of it, unless we think that there's no risk to the rights and freedoms of those people whose email or whatever data it was has been breached. Although I completely take your point that that is the $1 million question, and to err on the side of caution and report it anyway. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, I did a video on data breaches from the legal point of view, and I listed, certainly for the UK, how you would go about reporting a data breach on that video. So if you haven't watched that yet, you can go and refer back to that. What is, if you, and you might not be able to answer this question, but so say, we as small business owners, maybe we're blissfully unaware about all this amazing stuff that we should be doing. And somebody comes in, hacks in, data's compromised, there is a data breach. How do you think are the ICO going to react to that in terms of sanctions, fines, anything like that? Is it a case of they'll say, okay, Suzanne, you didn't know about this, put it in place going forwards? Or is it like most laws that are caveat emptor, it's the obligation is on us to know about the law, not, is the ignorance of the law is no defense, if you like. How do you think that for the average small business owner, Stuart, who isn't quite as up to speed on security matters as they should be, and there is a data breach, how do you think the regulators are going to react to that?
Well, the first thing they're going to do is look at your compliance with the GDPR, whether you've done, if you know what it is, you've been through it, you've defined your processes, you've looked at your IT security to support your compliance. No security is 100%, in any way, shape or form. So if you do a load of steps and you followed best practice, then the likelihood is the ICO are going to, do some recommendations or, learn from or whatever. And I don't think you're going to get much of a fine. Whereas if you have processes but you don't follow them and it's proven you don't follow them, then they're going to take a dimmer view. And if you don't have any processes in the first place, they're going to take a very dim view. So it's all on a scale of, I think, whether, a business has treated, your digital security in a way that is professional and expected of a business of your size. If you try to, just, I've met quite a few people and businesses who have an attitude that, oh, well, I'm only a small business, it'll never affect me. They're the kind of people that probably the ICO will make an example of. And it's, also, it's.
So what then? What would you recommend that small business
where
owners?
You've got,
Sorry,
I'm not getting any audio from you now.
Yeah, no, there's a delay. So, what would you recommend that small business owners do as sort of first steps? What's the bare minimum that small business owners should be doing before the 25th of May?
I just saw somebody put up kind of list examples of key processes we need to adopt. One is obviously about employees and employee data, and not only conforms with employee law, but in terms of data privacy, to make sure that only authorised people have access to. Secondly, you make sure that key suppliers who potentially access personal data, your IT, or maybe your web company, your web developer who's potentially helped you put your website together, where you've got registered users, things like forums, potentially more personal data. You need to make sure that you've checked and balanced that people have got the right level access, that it is secure, that it's only accessed on secure links, and any backups that exist of data are encrypted to make sure that you don't have like USB sticks or external USB drives that can be just picked up. And if they are,
oh, we've lost you again, Stuart. Hopefully it will just be a quick message and he will come back. Okay, let me scroll through some questions here while we're waiting for him to pop back. Okay, Richard says any business class router should do it. I think we're talking about the firewalls there, starting around £150 and up to £1,000. Jay is saying .co.uk domain who is free, and you can opt out at Nominet or within your domain registrar. Currently .com opt out is £5 a year. Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, well, we'll just wait for Stuart to come back on, because obviously this is really useful bit of what should we actually be doing to make sure that, and I think what Stuart's saying is very similar to what I say on the legal side, but obviously coming from an IT security side, which is the attitude of the ICO. If people who have stuck their head in the sand and said this is nothing to do with me, the ICO is going to take, as he says, more of a dim view with those type of people than the ones who are trying their best to work towards compliance. So this has certainly highlighted a number of areas that I need to look at. I'm hoping that my IT people have got this all under control and I don't need to worry about it, but I'll certainly be making a call after this to my IT people to say, just checking on this and this and this and this. So I think it's I think what it's demonstrated to me is that we do need to take these kind of risks really seriously, and it's only going to get more risky, isn't it? As people become more sophisticated in ways to hack in and to steal data and to compromise data. So well, let's hope that Stuart comes back. If he doesn't, what I'll ask him to do is maybe he could pop a quick checklist, a very quick checklist in the group of the types of things that us small business owners can be doing to become GDPR compliant on the security side, because let's remember where this comes from. It is one of the overriding principles of GDPR, as you would expect, to keep data secure. And I'll just read you out the relevant provision while we're waiting. Okay, so it comes in on the lawfulness of processing, sorry, not the lawfulness of processing, the principles, sorry. The principles relating to the processing of personal data. And the final principle is that personal data shall be processed in a manner that ensures appropriate security of the personal data, including protection against unauthorised or unlawful processing and against accidental loss, destruction or damage, using appropriate technical or organisational measures. And what else do I need to tell you about the Act? Let me just have a flick through. Come on, Stuart, come back, and then we can wrap up and tell people how to find you. I'll just give him a couple more minutes, and then we'll wrap this up if he is gone forever. Yeah, processes. So there is Article 32 for any of you who are interested. Talks about the security of processing. So if those of you who are processors, take a look at that. Oh, you're back. Okay, let's bring you on. Oh, Stuart, you've not got a little camera icon, and when I click on you, it's not giving me the option to bring you onto camera. Have you come on it in a different format? Because it's not letting me add you at the moment. Jay is saying you can also protect your website for free by using a CDN provider like Cloudflare, maybe that's a typo, Cloudflare, where IP traffic is filtered before hitting your site, preventing malicious attacks and bad traffic. Okay, so a CDN provider. Right, I'm going to write that down. CDN provider, Cloudflare. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, Stuart, if you can come back on the other, whatever you were on, maybe it was your phone, if you can come back on that, then I can just pop you on camera quickly and then we can wrap it up. But just back to the security of processing in Article 32. And actually this is an obligation on the controller as well as the processor. Yes, Stuart, you are on a camera now. I'll bring you on in one tick when I just read through this. So it says, taking into account the state of the art, the costs of implementation, and the nature, scope, context, and purposes of the processing, as well as the risk of varying likelihood and severity for the rights and freedoms of natural persons, the controller, i.e. us, people who are controlling the data, and the processor, who would be somebody like your web developer or whoever, someone who is processing that data under your instructions, shall implement appropriate technical and organisational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk, including, and then it lists a number of security measures like encryption, ability to restore the availability and access, process for regular testing, assessing and evaluating the effectiveness of measures to ensure the security, etc. So it's absolutely an obligation on controllers and processors to keep the data secure. Right, let's bring Stuart back on. There we go. And just while Stuart comes on, Richard is saying that from a physical point of view, have a decent business class router, encrypt backups and hard disks, and antivirus on machines. Okay, thank you for that, Richard. That's a good 3-step process that we can all get our heads around. Okay, that's a really helpful comment. Thank you for that, Richard. Okay, so come on, Stuart. We're adding you. It's flashing. It's saying adding, but you're not actually being added here. Okay, we'll give it half a minute more, and then if not, I'm going to wrap up, and Stuart can post in the comments group how you can find him if you need more information on this. Okay, all right, I think it's still not working for some reason. The technology gods are not shining on us this week. So I think we'll wrap it up there, and Stuart can add any final words and his contact details in the group. Thank you all for coming on and watching live, and for those of you who are watching the replay, hope that's been really useful for you. I think I've taken away a lot of good points from that. First one of which is to phone my IT person and say, are we all good on the security side for GDPR purposes? Yeah, there's I think those 3 steps that Richard posted really helpful there. Just as a reminder, decent business class router, encrypt backups and hard disks, and antivirus on machines. So I think those are the 3 things that I'm going to focus on. But that was super helpful, Stuart. If you can still hear me, thank you so much for coming on. Sorry again that we weren't in the proper landscape mode and that you were appearing in a little box above my head. My phone just wouldn't allow it for some reason, despite having used exactly the same phone and exactly the same setup for many, many Facebook Lives. But thank you for watching live. Thanks for your questions. Thanks as always for your engagement in the group and asking all your brilliant questions that exercise my brain like nothing else. Thanks for sharing about the group. Thanks for just being generally awesome. Okay, Stuart's posted his contact details there. Yeah, his email address and his phone number. So don't worry about asking Stuart to opt in for you to reach out and contact him. That's fine. Okay, that's you can take it as read that that's Stuart's consent to you using those details to get in touch with him to find out about his services. Richard is getting a sneaky promo on the back of this. Richard, you're going to have to come in and offer some standalone value, okay, if you want a promo in this group. So but thanks for your your 3 key points get you probably a quarter of the way there, but message me and tell me what other value you can add to the group. I'd be happy to hear that. Okay. Yes, Sionette, I tried to change into horizontal mode. Phone was just not having any of it, so there you go. All right, well, I'm going to go and enjoy the sunshine. My personal trainer is coming in 15 minutes. We're going to go out in the garden and jump around in the sunshine, which is just what I need after this week. So I wish you all a brilliant sunshiny Friday. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you very soon. Take care.